Okay, thank you everybody for joining. I hope you all had a good lunch and welcome back to the next session of the Fire Forum, which is about harnessing the power of wind energy. Before we start with housekeeping things, this session is going to be recorded. Right, for discussion and questions, so please do ask any questions there. We won't necessarily answer them as we go along, but I'll make sure we have block points to answer as we go. And finally, there will be some as we go in order to let you, the audience, get involved a bit. In fact, the first poll is now underway. And in fact, we would like to understand a bit about our audience. Who are you? Are you a service provider to Are you EO but currently working with the industry, or EO who would like to be with the industry, an academic or somebody else? So please answer this poll. And while we are answering that, I will pass over to our first speaker, who is Alex Vandenberghe, Research Director at Wind Europe. That is the voice of the European wind energy industry. It has around 400 member organizations across the sector. He's also a key player in the European Technology and Innovation Platform on Wind Energy, ETRP Wind, which helps coordinate research and innovation actions across the wind energy. So Alex, please tell us all about the needs of the wind energy industry.
Thank you very much, Philip, and thank you very much also to the Fire Forum and ERSC for the invitation to be part of this event and this panel in particular. Really looking forward to the discussion. I have some slides prepared, so I hope you can all see them. As Philip mentioned, I work for Wind Europe, which is the European Trade Association of the wind energy sector here in Europe. We cover more than 400 members across the entire value chain. You can see it on the screen here. So everybody who is involved in producing and selling wind energy, but also increasingly the large consumers of the electricity that we produce. So companies like Google, etc. So this is in a nutshell Wind Europe. I will not give too many details about that, but maybe also as a scene setting, not just talk about Wind Europe, but about wind in Europe and where do we stand as the wind energy sector. On the next slide, you can see where we are exactly as of last year, so December 31st, 2020. We had 220 gigawatts of installed capacity in Europe, and that provided for 16% of Europe's electricity demand. Now, on the slide, you can see a lot of bars on the screen. So the red bars and the blue bars. The blue bars show the gigawatt of installed capacity, and the red bars are the share of wind in the electricity demand in that particular country. And you can see that for some countries, for instance, Ireland and Denmark, wind is 38 and almost 50% of electricity in Denmark. And for large economies like Germany, the UK, Spain, Portugal, it's well over 25%. Yeah. So this shows that wind energy is no longer a niche technology. It's really one of the cornerstones of Europe's energy system. But of course, this is only the start of a story, yeah? A story that will continue to grow, and a story that is driven primarily by, of course, the climate ambitions that we here in Europe and also globally have. For Europe, this is the famous 2050 target that we have, which is climate neutrality. And as you can see on the next slide, really the ambition is huge. Yeah, we really need to start decarbonizing in 30 years a significant amount of our CO2 emissions, and it will require efforts across the entire economy. So how are we going to do this? Well, this is what the Commission is thinking, of course, and their answer is renewables-based electrification. Renewables-based electrification is the best way to decarbonize Europe's energy demand. Why electricity? Well, it is the most energy efficient energy carrier. Electric vehicles, for instance, are much more energy efficient than internal combustion engine vehicles. It's Also, electricity is also the energy carrier that we know how to decarbonize the fastest. And that is with renewable energy sources such as wind energy and solar PV. Those are technologies that are emission-free, sustainable, and local. The challenge is that today electricity is only 25%, as you can see on the left, and that to reach climate neutrality by 2050, we would need to go to 75% of electricity. So around 60% would be electricity use for electricity use, so direct electrification. Think of electric vehicles, electric heat pumps, etc. There's also a significant share of indirect electrification. There are some sectors, thinking of the steel sector, of maritime shipping, where direct electrification may not be the best way forward. So you need another way to decarbonize. And that could be through renewable hydrogen or derivatives, methanol fuels, for instance. These can be produced with electricity. So where an electrolyzer powered by a wind turbine, a solar panel, can produce that hydrogen that then goes to those other sectors. And so here is the scale that we see, the direction that we're heading to. And it will require a lot of efforts. So when we look at 2050, the challenge is double. On the one hand, it's increasing that share of renewables in the electricity system, and at the same time, tripling the energy system, and more than doubling the electricity system by 2050. So the scale up for the renewable energy technologies will be exponential. The capacity that we have today, around 220 gigawatts, will need 5 times, maybe even 6 times more by 2050. So that means increasing 5 times the installed capacity in just the next 30 years. This is doable, but it will require strong policies, strong ambitions, and of course also new technologies, new developments within those energy technologies that we know can deliver on the climate ambitions. For wind, for instance, we have identified 5 megatrends in wind energy technology that will help us deliver on those ambitions. You can see them here from left to right. It's about really scaling up the offshore wind market, where we will see multi-gigawatt wind farms being installed with very large turbines. But we're also looking to untap the floating potential of the wind energy sector, where we would have turbines that are, as the name suggests, floating further from shore, where there are slightly better wind resources, but where there's also opportunities to directly feed, for instance, into fueling stations for maritime shipping. Onshore, we also see significant developments. First is, of course, integrating the onshore wind turbines in the natural and the social environment. So reducing and continuing to reduce the environmental impacts, the visual impacts, the noise impacts. And at the same time, reusing the best wind sites where we installed the first generation of turbines 20 to 25 years ago, and reusing those sites with newer, better, more performant models to really maximize the value output that we can get from Europe's onshore wind resources. And the fifth trend, of course, is the circularity, where we as a sector are 100% committed to delivering a 100% circular economy within the wind energy sector. And of course, all of this will be underpinned by research and innovation, that we will need across the board when it comes to the turbines, when it comes to the system, when it comes to the materials that we need. And on this slide, you can see a broad overview that we have in our report, our roadmap, on all the priorities in the short term, to the medium term, to the long term. And Earth observation is part of this roadmap. It is perhaps one of those enabling technologies where we could benefit from the improvements that are happening in the Earth observation field to also help unlock the full potential of the wind energy sector. And I hope that in this panel, we will delve into more detail on how that is going to happen. I just want to highlight two things in this keynote, which is Earth observation could help to continue lowering the costs of wind energy, which will be essential to drive the decarbonization of the electricity system. And it could do so by improving or lowering the cost of the installation and the operation and maintenance of those turbines by improving the view on the weather conditions. When you need to install these turbines, when you can go out and visit and make the reparations that you need. At the same time, and that's the other point that I want to highlight, is that perhaps there is also a room for Earth observation data to facilitate the work of policymakers when it comes to spatial planning and permitting procedures. We need to scale up the wind energy sector. We need to scale up PV parks. Where are we going to place them? Yeah, from the wind side, we can help build turbines that are going to be better integrated into the natural and social environment. But ultimately, of course, we need to place them somewhere. And maybe Earth observation data could also help in siting those turbines, both help nurturing the needs of the wind sector, the wind industry, but also the needs of policymakers and society in finding the right places and the right balances of where you would place these wind turbines. And so I hope this will be a very broad introduction, but comprehensive introduction to where we stand as the wind energy sector in Europe. And maybe it's already opening some doors for a discussion on how Earth observation can help wind energy grow to where we need it to be in order to deliver a climate neutral Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any immediate questions, so I think we will carry on with the presentation of our EO evangelist, Miriam Gonzalez. Miriam was already introduced this morning, so I won't spend too much time reintroducing her, but just to say that she's expert in the use of spatial data, including working as a volunteer and director in OpenStreetMap, and is currently working for Up42 in Berlin. He's going to tell us some of the key outcomes of the focus groups in this subject held.
Thanks a lot, Philip, for presentation. I hope you can see my screen now. I mean, in these real-time events, things can happen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's move forward. So thanks for having your presence here in this event. So I will be presenting. Perfect. So I will be presenting air observation in renewable energies, focusing in wind energy. In the one I am air observation evangelist. So let's move forward. I mean, I am glad also that Alex just mentioned this data that I was having in my first couple of slides. So we know that by 2050 we need to have Europe climate neutral continent. So by 2050, the onshore and also offshore wind energy will be providing 50% of the electricity demand in Europe and 25% of the energy demand. So to be able to achieve this goal, where we are today. So in 2020, 60% of Europe electricity demand was coming from wind energy. And also for going a bit deeply in kind of economic numbers, it was employing more than 350,000 people. It was having 25 billion euros of new investments. The exports were more than 8 billion of goods and services. And also some good news in the sector is that European companies are leading in manufacturing by having 90% of the product in the wind offshore global market. So this is really important, I mean, to be honest with you guys. So how can we see the benefits of air observation technologies in the wind energy sector? So we can have the benefits of having large areas in the ones we can see all this imagery available. Also, we can have different type of resolutions. If we need high resolution, we can even have these private constellations in order to have a better resolution and also more frequent instead of maybe Copernicus, for example. So not only pictures, we can also have radar data available. Also, something really good is that we can combine what is already available in air observation with also in situ data created maybe by drones in this case, because the drones are the ones right now doing kind of the monitor and assessment in the wind turbines. And also, you can have also near real-time data. But this is something that also we wanted to know directly from the people already involved in the sector. So I'm glad also Philip mentioned about this research, this survey that it was done, also organized by the FIRE initiative. In the one, different people who are already expert in wind energy sector, they were part of these workshops. In the ones we have certain outcomes that I would like to share with you today. So you can see this graphic. I know it's a kind of a heavy graphic. You will be seeing 6 different applications of air observation technologies in for wind energy. So these 6 applications will kind of measure. On the left part, you can see opportunities in this application. You can see maybe the perception about how useful they are. Also, you can see the perception regarding technical feasibility. And of course, you can see also maybe the perceived return of investments. So out of these 6 applications, there are 3 that you can see different colors, and I will be explaining a bit. So the greener they look, it has a more positive scoring. The one people has this perception that about is maybe have opportunities, is useful, and also technical feasibility, and also maybe there's a perceived return of investment. If you see the darker color, the darker blue color, it will be that maybe the people involved in the sector, they don't see at this point many benefits. That's why they have a low scoring. So I will focus in the 3 ones that people made this really positive scoring for these ones. So the first one is the wind energy forecasting. The second one is the wind farms planning, and the third one, the wind speed mapping. So let's go to the first one for 1 second. So why is so important to have the wind energy forecasting? I mean, if we already have a goal for 2015, the one we need 50% of all this energy demand. So we need to see also what is the output of these wind farms. We need to know the output also to be able to forecast what is needed to be able to reach this goal. I was checking a few days ago a tool I found in the internet. In the one, there is a way to do a polygon in the North Sea, and then you will be able to see how many gigawatts you will be able to produce if you put wind farms in this area, for example. So that's a really interesting use case. The second one is the wind farm planning. So already with observation technologies, we can see elevation models, maybe we can see bathymetries in certain areas, and also we can see the seabed movement within a certain time frame in certain regions. So this will be able to help how to establish all these wind farms in certain areas in the ones we know maybe the constraints, or maybe we can have the benefits with the observation data. Regarding the third point, the wind speed mapping, of course, there is something very important, because at this point, we are witnessing more and more extreme weather events due to the climate change. So how can we have also all this information from meteorological sources, and also combined with other sources, in order to have all this prediction to see where a strong storm is coming, maybe also lightning storms are coming. So we are working ahead of the curve and be able to assess the risk in certain areas, and also in the time that it comes when there is a strong storm, also people can be able to work in advance and maybe turn off the turbines to be able to have less damage in case some damage is forecasted. So this is something really important. And this is the applications that people already in the wind energy sector, they think they will be something that will be perceived as really positive. Also in this study, in this survey, there was a SWOT analysis. In the one, I won't go deeply to all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I will focus on opportunities, because it's very interesting to see how the previous slide is also linked to this one. In the one, all these people, expert in the wind energy topics, they already foresee how observation data can be able to support maybe where are we going to be creating energy islands and hubs, how companies, they are already thinking about how integrating in their own roadmaps all this implementation of observation data, how also the costs can be reduced, as Alex mentioned, to be able to, have all these companies already experimenting in the wind energy sector. And of course, how we can do all these accurate numerical weather prediction models in order to have also this forecast for the energy in the future. So now that we have all these opportunities, so what is the barrier we are facing today? So we try to do also this exercise to be able to identify the barriers. So as you can see here in this slide, certain barriers are maybe people thinking either the data is too raw and it's complicated because there are different formats. Still, observation is too scientific for certain people. Maybe the cost is high still for many companies. There are so many things that are involved in these still barriers located in the market. Well, then how can we transform this barrier into needs? One example could be maybe we need to show more proof of concepts. Maybe we need to use more use cases in the ones people already are using and experimenting with observation data for wind energies. Also, about being too scientific, how can we have all this data available, but then not just having there the data on the shelf? How can we make this data be able to have all this analysis and also be having all these insights to be able to have decision making more accurate for the current needs for the future goals? Also, all these barriers regarding how to work with the data is, I think, linked also with the last point in this slide, in the one, how can we have all these teams full of wind energy experts and also combined with air observation specialists in the ones they can work together in these multidisciplinary teams to be able to analyze the data better and also be able to innovate together and create the future technologies that will be supporting all these industries. So there's so many things still open, I would say, but then I would think working together we can make things happen. So the next slide will be, what can we do next? So from my point of view, I think is getting involved. How can we know more about what you are doing, what you are developing, what you are doing this research on, and please share with us. I think please feel free to reach out to me, and I will be glad also to be vocal about all your developments and also see how we can work together in the industry to make things better, to be able to have a greener future. So thank you for the time. I'm looking forward to connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. That brings the presentations. So I'd like to start bringing in the other panel members. So let me introduce them. We have Brüdgam, who is the head of environmental analytics, which is a wind turbine manufacturer based in Germany, but worldwide. And his specific activities include optimizing turbine design and layout. He represents in this, if you like, the end user perspective of this. We have Gil LIZCANO, the research and development. It provides wind energy industry. He's founder of Climate Scale, which applies Vortex's technology to assess climate impacts. In this, he kind of represents the service sector. We have Ioanna Karagali, DMI, but until recently, BTU Wind Energy Group. The use of observations for modeling a variety of physical processes, but here is that includes assessment. And she represents the Earth observation sector in all of this. So I think as a first question, ask Michael, the commentations you just had, do you feel reflects the needs and the views of the wind energy industry as it appears to you as an end user?
Thanks very much for inviting me here to this panel discussion. Yes, I would gladly answer this question. I think that both presentations given are reflecting very well what we are facing at the moment, which means that to some extent we are already using some satellite data, but only to a limited extent. So I think there can be definitely more be involved in the wind industry from the satellite data, so from the EO data, especially when we come to forecasting or foresighting, because this is, from my perspective as an end user, let's say the near product we would like to achieve. The other four products shown there in Miriam's presentation, let's say they are a little bit far in the future. There is a long way to go, but it's definitely going into the right direction. And I think it also reflects in the presentation very well that we have also some limitations still from the technical point of view, where also the EO data need to be improved, and there needs to be further technology development so that it's more applicable for the end user like ours, so that we also can measure wind onshore, which is at the moment unfortunately not that good possible, because most of the turbines we already have here in Europe are onshore. So having said this, so definitely we need this, and we would gladly involve this in the industry, but there is room to improve.
Okay, thank you. Gil, would you also like to comment from your perspective, from more the service side of things? Do you feel this reflects your experience and its needs?
Well, thank you for the invitation again, and thank you for the presentations. First, Alex, it's always important that we emphasize the targets and the ambition we have, and we rely on Win Europe to drive us the way to the European Parliament, so to get these ambitions. And on the Miriam presentation, so I think it's a very good analysis of the situation. Obviously, with a study that we have run with real users. For me, the Earth observing system is really being employed by the industry without the industry being aware of that. So we can say that the Earth observing data can be on the stage or can be backstage. In the backstage, that is on all the reanalysis and climate products and the forecasting service that we use, Earth observing system is really critical. It's what has made an improvement in the way that we use this product. So if we compare the use of the reanalysis 10, 15 years ago with the new generation of reanalysis product, one of the added so over the last year is obviously the computing power, the physics of the models, the resolution of the models, but the use of better the assimilation of Earth observing data. So I think on backstage we are using quite a lot, and we relied. And as you mentioned, forecasting is really critical for operation of the wind farms, and also for the energy balance, for even for the spot markets. So for the trading, so in terms of forecasting, I think there is like the ambition should be higher in terms of how we can adapt the weather forecast system to be really more fit to purpose for the industry, and I think the combination of weather forecast with near real-time Earth observing data could be also essential. In terms of wind conditions and wind mapping. There is one big limitation that has not been mentioned, is that we need, for the wind industry, we need a consistent data. So we need to, if we want to track the wind conditions over the last 20 years, it's very important that the information we have that represents these 20 years is consistent on time. So that is one of the barriers that we could have in terms of using more Earth observing system, because we need long-term period data sets. But in what is related to, for instance, the site information, which is very important when we try to get information to the level of the wind farm, there is quite a lot of potentials. And this is when the Earth observing system is on the stage. For instance, when we want to track the changes of forest over one season, because this has an impact on the wind conditions on the sites and the production that you would expect. So this is just a small example. There is quite a lot of potential, and as well the offshore, because offshore is more critical to measure on sites. All the ocean products are really now being employed and are really, as Ioanna knows, are very fit to purpose.
Okay, thank you. Alex, do you have anything more to comment on this from industry perspective before I flip? The investigation perspective?
No, I think
to you and your members.
It's familiar to our members that work with Earth observation. I think Gil and Michael have done a great job. I think it's important to reiterate just 2 points, which is those different needs. You have forecasting, near real-time data, sighting, historic, long-term, consistent data. Yeah, and so those two different requirements. So each specific use case has a different requirement there. And the second is a point I link what Michael said with what Gil said, the onshore, offshore. So for onshore, okay, wind speed measurements are more complicated, also due to the terrain, etc. So there's a room for Earth observation maybe to improve, help improve that there. In the offshore environment, technically it would be a lot easier, but you are in an offshore environment, so putting up a met mast, so a measurement mast, you can do it, but it might be easier to do it remote. Yeah, it might be much more cost effective. So also there you have these different use cases. I just wanted to iterate, like I said, but I think everything was well pointed out by Gil and Michael.
Okay. Thank you. So let's turn to you for the Earth observation perspective. I think I think other requirements, other things that are asking, are they reasonable, that realistic? Seen any opportunities? Is there anything that Earth observation can do that maybe yet being considered?
Yes, hello for me. Thanks for inviting me, and thank you all for participating in this. I'm really glad to be putting on my Earth observation hat and leave my wind energy user hat out for this discussion. So I think the topics mentioned are indeed realistic, and I think it's very important to keep in mind that wind energy specifically, or any type of renewable, was never a use or a direct application for Earth observation. That was the concept of Earth observation has been for monitoring the climate and the weather. So I think there's a very, very nice feedback mechanism where if the wind energy community can actually demonstrate the use of an applicability of Earth observation data, it suddenly gives more also reasons to the funding agencies and the space agencies to continue developing missions and making things more relevant for a wider range of applications than what originally was decided. So we are now at this point where it's really, really important to explore what else can we do with the data. And in doing that, it will also create a link so we can actually make a platform to provide feedback to the Earth observation community for how much better these missions can be designed, or for which target group should they aim. So there's a lot of things to be done, and it's very nice to see that the wind energy community is becoming aware of Earth observation. Beyond wind and land monitoring that Gil mentioned, there's obvious links related to, let's say, operation and maintenance, and maybe that doesn't have to be necessarily real-time O&M, but Earth observation data can provide information for site conditions that can be relevant to O&M, for example. And the list is tides, especially for the offshore environment. The list is quite long. So yeah, I hope I've answered the point. I think I'd really like to summarize the importance of the link between the two. The wind energy community and the Earth observation community. They need to talk and understand each other more.
Sure. And I think maybe one of the other community we could mention is the meteorological community, because I think a lot of the applications that we've been hearing about here almost about improving the weather forecast as it is about a direct application of Earth observation. Would you tend to agree with that?
Totally. It's what.
Breaking up a bit, I think.
Yeah, no, I can't.
So
I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Yes, I totally agree that weather forecast is essential on the Earth observing system. The data is essential in weather forecast. So, and this has been it's not new. And we see that the weather forecast model are getting with higher resolution, granularity, they resolve more features. So in that sense, I think the best they can be nudged with observation. Real time is very important because the initialization of the weather forecast is critical to get the right results. For instance, one example that we are awaiting as a community, so maybe we are not really aware, is what is going to be the input, the outcome of the ILOS project in the new generation of weather forecast systems. So this is something that's just 1 year that is in operation. The data are available, but it will be really interesting to see how this new set of products can improve the weather forecast technology. That at the end, in all the modeling change, reach the consultants that produce the package, the power production forecast.
Add to that, and specifically to what Gil just mentioned, I think there's already, or I'm quite sure actually, I'm aware there's already a lot of indications for the added value of EOLUS in the ECMWF forecasting system. They are already assimilating the data. The mission will not last longer than a year more than now, or maybe 2. But that was not the point. The point was that it was a demonstration mission. And the positive thing from that is that they are already planning the future space-based LiDAR missions for the end of this decade. And I think I have been a part of a scientific advisory group for the EOLUS mission. And again, I'd like to stress that they as space agencies and the EUMETSAT consortium, it's very important that they receive positive feedback from a wider range of communities. So it is relevant for them also to see that they are not only serving the NWP world and the meteorological world. Yeah.
I would also like to, let's say, to add some point on that. I definitely agree with Joanna that the both communities, so the EU EO community and the wind industry, have to communicate more, because as Gil already pointed out, we have benefits from it. We are already using EO data. However, the new, let's say, results coming up, nobody really knows from the wind industry, at least from my perspective, how much is the added value. So you can't quantify really what's the added value. So from this perspective, of course, the wind industry is more an industry and not a research institution. We are a little bit, let's say, conservative on this perspective to see, okay, is this really some added value? Is this some product with which we can gain some money with our products? So from this perspective, definitely the EO data, the additional EO data coming up, need to prove that there is value in them and that we can apply this, and that we, with a higher value, can, for example, sell some turbines or can better do siting and so on. And this is not quantified yet. So this explains to some extent why the wind industry is a little bit, not that pushy, and also holding a little bit back to see, because definitely we need to have, let's say, some kind of proof of concepts or some validation. And if this is proven, definitely I think there will be a run on this EO data to have them and to integrate them. But not before this is been shown. I think this will be used in a wide variety. But as you can see, definitely we are interested. We are here. We would like to talk with you. But this is one point we have to overcome. And this is a main point I would like to highlight.
Okay. And in fact, this really brings us on to the next topic of discussion around the gaps and challenges in using the Earth that are already out there. So maybe I'll come back to that discussion. Maybe let's start with Alex and ask what the key limiting factors are in the uptake of Earth observation by the industry. Is it unfamiliarity? Is it being conservative, or what?
Well, I think actually Michael really summed it up very nicely. I think for most, it's, let's call it a perceived lack of quality, yeah, where with that I mean, does the data and does the new technologies that are being developed in the Earth observation area, do they tailor the specific use cases that we have? And are they significantly better than the existing technologies that we have, the existing data sets that we have? So it is about technical questions about resolution, etc. It's about data validation, but it's also about the question about the business case, yeah. And really finding that out and testing that will be key. So in order to test that, we would need some sort of an incentive, yeah, which could be a funding program, a project. We test these things out where you de-risk the uptake of the innovation in that field. So I think that's one key point that Michael made that is very important. The other point, which is perhaps, let's say, hampering the uptake of EO data, is the skill set that is required. So we have within the services and the service providers and the consultancies, obviously people highly skilled who are able to work with this data. But at the end consumers, the question there is, what is the value of hiring somebody with that skill set? What is the value of training somebody with that skill set, developing that knowledge in-house, or just working with external consultants, where of course these companies tailor to a wide variety of industries. So companies like Vortex, where Gil is working at, wind energy is one of their clients, yeah, but they service different sectors. So for us as the wind sector, this is also a trade-off that we have to make. Yeah. Do we have the right skills, and is it worth for us to invest that and build that up, or will we always rely on external providers?
And maybe let's ask that one to Gil as well. Do you feel the right skill set? And are you looking to get that skill set in-house, or would you be more interested in partnering up with somebody who could provide that expertise externally? Sorry, there were a lot of questions.
I'm mute. Sentence of the year. I think that the skills are important. You need to understand how to work with raster data, how to download the data, how to convert the data, how to reproduce the data. But I think one barrier is to navigate through the data, because there are so many projects in Europe, in Japan, in the US. You go to the website that they provide the data. For a person that I understand myself like a little bit used to work with data, still is a problem, because I think for instance, the notion of level 1, level 2, level 3, all this the standardization of the format, I think it's a problem. But for me, it's better is to know which are the data that I have to pick. And Ioanna knows because I came to her 3 times in the last 6 months asking, I need data because we are doing an analysis for tropical cyclones and I need a second opinion. So we have the model data, but I need some opinion from the pure satellite data. And she helped me to say, okay, it's here, go here. Or even you gave me the data, but you go further than that. So I think apart from being able to work with these raster files and many data and many files, it's obviously need some skills, but they are not so important. It's especially to know exactly which information you need. So for me, that will be something that is even before the, and I say, okay, it's like a point. You know? Obviously, there are other restrictions, but it's more on the specifications because how to work with very high granularity data, how to work with data that we don't, the satellite space is not every hour of the year taking pictures of the sites, no? How to work with how to evaluate the quality of the data, where to find the evaluation of this data, how to, because in the industry we don't have too much time to read too much. So, which is good, but it's not good. so it's important that these things are very curated.
Okay, thank you. So, Ioanna, you're the person that they come to for help when they need this help. So, what would you be advising the industry to do? How would you, what do you think they need? Do they need just more ad hoc support from people like you, or is there something more systematic that can be provided?
Yeah, well, it's a kind of two-faced question, Philip. And so from one point of view, this is something that at least at DTU Wind Energy, we've been trying to do for many, many years. And that was to create the link of this more advanced expertise, specifically on the Earth observation data, translated to products or services for the wind energy industry. So, for example, we've been disseminating resource assessment services based on Earth observation data in a way that is more understandable and usable from potentially the community. So instead of, let's say, getting reanalysis data from ECMWF or wherever else and providing a mean wind speed map, for example, we've been doing similar activities with Earth observation. So I think we need this intermediate step. Now, if that's going to be a research institute or a university department, or even a small subgroup of a company, probably a small group of a company is not every company can do that. So it's nicer if these things are more centrally, let's say, disseminated. On the other hand, now we are reaching to a point that a lot of, especially with Copernicus in place, there is a lot of support for using data and navigating on data. So Copernicus has a really nice help desk where everybody can ask questions and be guided through products and services and what needs to be found. And also now they are hosting really nice webinars, training tutorials, how to get data, how to read data in basic open source software like Python. So yeah, there is an attempt from the EO community to train people, resource free, of course, into using and getting used to the data. But also, I think we need to acknowledge that not everybody needs to be a specialist. There needs to be an intermediate step where the, let's say, raw data, if you want to use this term, are translated into already existing products and services for like the general use, either that's a company or a decision maker. And then, of course, if there's more tailoring to be made, then we can move to more commercial, I guess, concepts like, you know, external consultants or whatnot. So there is already a tendency to try and help people to use the data because we understand that not everybody can be a specialist.
Sure. So, I mean, for Gil and Michael, how much would you like to see brought in-house? And how much would you like to collaborate with organizations such as DTU or specialist consultancies?
If I may start on this, from my perspective, of course, I'm the end user. I do not need to be an expert on that, because I would like to have, and I completely agree with Ioanna, we do not have to be involved that deep. Of course, everybody wants to understand where's the data coming from, what is the essence of the data, what can we do with this kind of data. However, we would be happy to get the product and then use it as it is, so to say. So from our perspective, we would like to have these kind of service that we only get the data. So this is, from my perspective, the best way we could handle this.
My point of view is a little bit different, because we are like a translator in a way, climate service, private climate service. We want to work, we want to process this information. So obviously not at the level of expertise of a specialist on EU, but we want to do more things, because we want to downstream our help using this data, improve our downstream system. So we obviously we are interested in having tools that help us analyze the data, but we need basically, like as mentioned now, a central place like Copernicus Climate Data Service, that is data store, that somehow guide us and send us directly where we get the data, and probably with some documentation that is clear, is centralized, it's not very long, it's thinking in someone that just needs to know the quality of the data and the limitations and the potential of the data, and have a very simple way to download the data for different periods, years, days, etc. That would be, well, that's thinking on more on observation that is span over time. Obviously, there are also, for instance, altimetry, land cover, that are like more fixed products. That's also very important. Actually, land cover is something that's maybe a very high resolution land cover database of the Earth free will be a hit parade.
I think I can say that you would not be the only person interested in that. Good. And actually, that would be another question. An open point. How much of what is specific to the wind industry, where there is scope for collaboration with other industries using Earth observation data? I'll probably put that question to Ioanna as the Earth observation expert in the panel.
I think definitely there is I mean, the community, Earth observation community does not learn only from the wind energy community or vice versa, but of course there are specific existing communities that are, let's say, more used to receiving Earth observation data, and they are more familiar with it. And you mentioned the meteorological community before, Philip. So it's not necessarily a business community, but there are examples of how the links can be created. And of course, it requires a certain amount of dynamic to create those links. And as Michael mentioned before, of course, we need to make a better job in disseminating accuracy and uncertainty of the products. We need to make a better job at actually demonstrating how they can be a supporting material rather than standalone products. But there's definitely, I mean, in terms of renewables, there's solar that has an obvious link with Earth observation, marine renewables as well, wave energy related Earth observation data can be also very helpful. So it's not only I would not put it only in the wind industry, but generally in the renewables. And of course, I don't need to mention agriculture and yeah, there's a suite of industries that are relevant.
Sure. In fact, we have a couple of the sessions going on at the moment, which probably substantially overlap with this one, in particular the one on maritime and marine. Okay. So I think we've got a set of needs. The real question that we're coming to is what can be done about it, because the whole idea of this session is to really capture some concrete recommendations that we can pass to the sort of people who have funding and expertise of what they should be doing. So I think, Alex, I'm going to come back to presenting the cross-industry perspective. What do you think that the space institutions, the Earth observation institutions, in particular, the more institutionalized bodies like USPA, also ERSC as a research organization, what would you like to see them doing to help the wind industry?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. That's a good question with a lot of acronyms in there. So I think the key points or the key takeaways, if I also listen to Michael, Ioanna, Gil, and Miriam, are three things, right? One is getting the sectors to talk in more, let's say, regular, institutionalized format. So I think the institutions always play a role. I think also here the Fire Forum and the Fire Project has a role has a mandate to play that role and be that bridge, bringing the industries sectors together to discuss on the technical side of things, but also the wider aspects. I think that's point one. I think point two is standardizing the data that is out there, the products that are out there, harmonizing them, making them more easily accessible, findable, so that they can be more easily used, they can be more easily translated into products that serve specific needs. I think that's a key point where obviously the space institutions would and the Earth observation sector would play a role in mapping that and starting that harmonization process. And then the third point would be, and then I'm looking more towards funding authorities like the European Commission, is driving the tests of these new solutions, yeah, and doing the pilot projects, de-risking the technology so that the industry can take it up and learn by trial by error, right? So which is also going to be essential. But because of the challenges ahead, I think we could definitely benefit from that little institutional support, both financially, but also because it would be institutionalized, it would have a certain cachet that would have results that would be applicable for the entire sector. These common projects that are funded at EU or at joint national level would be very useful. So those would be three next steps or three big actions that I would like to see happening in the next few years.
Okay, Mikhail, do you agree with that, or would you have anything else that you would like to add?
I definitely agree with the let's say the answers Alexander has given. These are definitely steps which need to be taken by the policymakers and also to make this happen. What I would like to add on this point is, of course, this would be the first 3 steps, and this would be then, let's say, get the things running. But nevertheless, it's then not within the industry totally, because also within the wind industry, although we are a quite young industry, there are quite a lot of regulations. And when you bring in new data products and so on, they also need to be accepted by the industry, by the banks, by the regulation boards, and so on. So even if we have these 3 steps done, there needs to be additional steps afterwards within the industry to really bring this into, because if we follow the standards, and as an example, let's say, I would like to mention here that Some years ago, we had the new technology, which is now everybody who's in the industry knows this. We had ground-based lidars, and ground-based lidars were not very well accepted by the banks to give credits, to give, let's say, a very nice credit. And it took us quite a while to bring this in the norms, and not before this is mentioned in the norms and in the standards, it will be used. So these are the first steps for the policymakers, but afterwards the industry has to take their steps too, to bring this into the laws, into the standards, to use these kind of data that is well accepted, well perceived by everyone, and can be used. This is,
I guess this links back to the sort of de-risking pilot project
yeah.
that I was talking about. Okay. Gil, would you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think the point that Michael said at the beginning is very important. I would like to add that it's very important as well that the ambition of Earth observing is not to replace everything like Earth observing. So it's not, I say you can be in the backstage and you are already there. And that's why we have this fantastic reanalysis that provides this time series that then is post-processed by the wind energy experts to create long-term assessment of the wind conditions. So it's there, and this is assimilated. And probably it's not that we need now to have another LiDAR coming from the space. It's maybe to have more tools to support the screening conditions in regions where we lack information, especially the ocean, helping to improve the models with more data to evaluate the quality of the models, because satellite data has things that the models don't have, and vice versa. And also, it's very important as well that we work more on the synergy of what we have. For instance, I think there is quite a lot of potential in merging the models with more and better Earth observing data, either at the climate weather level or the microscale level. And then obviously there is quite a lot of relevance, and I think this is something that could be very important for projects development and R&D, is the quality assessment. So showcase more how the data compare and benchmark with existing data, even with existing Earth observing data. Because in the industry, as Michael knows, we don't want to change things without knowing why we change it.
Okay. Ioanna, I'm going to ask you the same question, whether you have anything to add to this, but I'd also like to spin it around a bit as well, and also ask maybe the reverse question of whether there's anything that the industry can be doing to help the Earth observation community in working together.
So, of course, there's no need to kind of agree with what has been said, and particularly to stress once again that at this point no one is discussing, or there's never going to be the point that we discuss about substituting. And I think Michael mentioned before the ground-based LiDARs, there's a point where they will probably substitute, or they do already substitute, meteorological masts and cap anemometers. And that makes sense, but in our case, this is not the focus, and it doesn't need to be the focus. Of course, the Earth observation community, or at least the scientific community that tries to disseminate more Earth observation data, would definitely be supported a lot by sharing data, in situ data particularly. Philip, could I ask you to mute yourself?
Sorry.
No worries, that's fine, it happens. It's because of the keyboard. So yeah, for sure we've in the past looked for and tried to find in situ measurements that we know the industry holds very dear, and they are very good at deploying instruments and getting measurements. And for example, data sets like that would help us a lot to validate Earth observation data, but also the models in various locations. And of course, there is also an important component, which is that it would be nice to have input and feedback on what is it that would be needed, or what it takes to make this data more usable and more relevant for the industry. So yeah, it can be realistically something that is data, for example, that we can use, but it also is a bit of time and effort from their side to see what we can do, or what the Earth observation community can do, and you know, provide feedback. And of course, this is very relevant to what Alexander said before, projects funded by the Commission or by national bodies that also provide resources to the companies to assign time for user-dedicated workshops or for tests is also very important. So funding is also, it needs to come from somewhere. I mean, the industry cannot just use time on their own, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. If there are any audience questions, please do raise them now. Otherwise, I'm going to round table just to ask everybody if they're having any final comments or things we have not covered. Alex, maybe I'll start with you there. Is there any final remarks or things that you think we have missed?
No, I think the discussion has been very good. I think we have a very clear picture of, you know, how to proceed, or how this discussion needs to move forward, and who needs to be involved. I do have one crazy open question in my mind still, which is, how would Earth observation data help policymakers with their spatial planning? And related to that, the permitting of projects. This is one of the key, let's say, barriers that we see in countries like Germany. You know, permitting is slowing down. We see spatial planning is increasingly complex. I have somewhere in the back of my mind, I have an idea. Earth observation data could help governments, you know, by informing them with clear data. I mean, real-time, up-to-date, high-definition data. That's, you know, in my mind, it's sometimes still made out of topographical maps, and then, you know, they color it in and it changes. I think, you know, we could see maybe the surge there of Earth observation data breaking through and really making the most out of the space that we have. You know, where and that would be something that maybe in the next months and years we can explore. That's my out-of-the-box idea that I still have in my head, that maybe it's worth exploring.
Okay, Michael, any further thoughts or things that you think we've missed?
I agree with Alexander, and I would like to add on this crazy question of Alexander's. I don't think that this is the crazy thing we would like to reach, or we should reach for. I think this is the way to go, and I would like, let's say, disagree a little bit with Ioanna. I think the long-term goal should be that EO, so remote sensing data from satellites, should substitute everything, because if we set up some measurements, we only measure locally. These are good data, these are high quality data, but as a long-term goal, and as we are here talking about goals of 2050, for example, of course, satellite data also need to develop and need to be improved in this perspective, that a large extent can be done then by remote sensing. And if we have the possibility to do so, I think then this crazy question of Alexander's can become not a utopia, but it will become reality, and in this direction we definitely have to go, not only for our industry, so for the wind industry who wants to know where there are the best spots to place the turbines, but also for the policymakers to do good decisions. How many areas, especially for Germany, can we have to set up turbines? Where are the good wind conditions? And also to let's say differentiate a little bit between the let's say competitors, agriculture, wind industry, environmental sectors, to combine and to synergize this. And we cannot do this by local and very limited measurements, but by EO data. And this, I think, is the is my high expectation I have from these kind of thing. And I think this is also the reason why the wind industry is interested in these kind of things. So I'm looking forward very much to this, to that this takes place.
Okay. Final comments?
If we can start a new debate, I not agree with Michael, but maybe we can open a new debate in another session. I think, and I would like to emphasize that EO is really there in the backstage. Sometimes because we are obsessed by end user, it's something that sometimes for the commission is something that it's appetized. But sometimes the most important end users are the ones that are in the middle, because they are the ones that are really gonna fill the gap between the global. Michael is not agree with me, so we have more topics to discuss in this debate. But I think the role of the translators, that could be people from the industry, people from the climate services, people from like small tech companies like us, or people in departments, very advanced departments in big corporations that we have these resources, are very critical to do this translation. And again, Earth Service System is already very present in the backstage, and I think it's good. Don't worry, it's far enough. So then I think there is already an added value that nobody can deny.
Thank you. And then in this particular debate, at least for now, Ioanna, you get the last word on this.
All right, that's an honor, and then I'll try to kind of bridge the gap, if there's any. That's not, but just for saying, maybe we should have done this from the beginning, but at least within the European context and Copernicus, Earth observation means space observation, which is remote sensing. It means in situ observation, and it also means models. So it's kind of, we are there in a way. We have the models that we use, we have in situ that we use, and there is, beyond the wind energy industry and going further to the general Earth observing system, there is an understanding that we need everything and as much of everything as we can to do as good as we can. So there is a point where things will become better than they are now, and maybe other things will become a bit more obsolete. But I think we can say that we have a community, a scientific community, that is trying to provide as much and as best as they can data for the planet to support society in all decision makers. I think I would like to see, I agree, that I would like to see governments and states using Earth observation data to overlay maps about land use, agricultural areas, Natura areas. There is information out there to do so. And I think some of the countries already are doing things like that. So we just need to talk to each other more, and we need to try and understand what we need and how to moderate those needs. So I think we are in a very good place, and we have good ideas of how to take it further.
Taken this, the Earth observation evangelist for the wind industry. So I think, having heard the discussion today, how do you feel about that role? Do you think that there's a set of Earth observation stories to be?
Thank you, Philip. So I think this industry has a lot of potential. So the way I see it in other areas of the other evangelists is that there is already certain road already already in the way. But here, I think we are still in the beginning, in the one we need to do so many things. I really like what Michael said regarding how can we make, quantify all these benefits, because at this point, I mean, we don't have many use cases, we don't have many proof of concepts. So how can we educate more the people about these benefits? Also, when we need all these, we need numbers in order to also move things faster, move things forward. So I think this industry has a lot of potential, and I think with the point we were mentioning in this discussion, there is still a good way to go. So getting familiar, quantifying things, and also making certain products more accessible and also easy to understand to the people who is. There are different users I see here. There's the last use case, and also there's intermediate use case like you mentioned, and then how we can also target all these intermediates in the way so we can also provide all this information that be able to make people decision makers and also policy makers in order to move things forward in a faster way. So I think there is still a long way to go, but also we are right now shaping the future of the industry together with Earth observations.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we're going to wrap it up there. We can rejoin the plenary at 4 o'clock when we'll discuss a bit what the next steps are, but I think it's very important that we want to take some of the conclusions from this and present them upwards in such a way that some of the things happen. And these are not just a discussion that draws to a close, but something that really pushes things forward and makes some of the things we've been talking about happen. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank Miriam. I'd like to thank the various technical behind the scenes. Thank you all for a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure we will be in touch again to take this further. And with that, I think we can close the. With that, I think we can close the session. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Ciao.